Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of people in urban areas that are not having children. And many of you that grew up in the city, you always knew there was a white side of the city and a black side of the city. Okay. And they're not talking about the black side of the city that is becoming childless. And you'll see that as we get into this story. So this came out in the Atlantic July 18th, 2019. The future of the city is childless. A lot of people are not bothering with marriage and children anymore, not like they used to many years ago. And they're saying it's too hard and expensive to raise children. And actually, they're right. Everything is way more inflated than it was years ago when people were having children, and it might have been more affordable. Now, housing is outrageous, and just trying to have a family life, if you don't have the income for that, it will literally kill all of your money and your cash. And that's how these kids are thinking. They're not quick to be in those situations. A lot of the millennials ain't even buying up the homes because they said they're too expensive. So, what America has done is made the whole climate very unfriendly to adults to even have kids. And they've inflated everything to the point where they don't even want to attempt to buy a lot of the housing out here anymore. Like, I'm going to go broke trying to pay for this shit. So many of them are satisfied with where they live in their studio apartments and places where they may be renting, but they can afford it, opposed to buying a house and you got property taxes, insurance, and all of these other things. And then on top of paying for all of that, you pay to raise kids, and everything is inflated. And that's the problem in America. It's too inflated. You went overboard. But see, now you can't run your society any other way unless everything is overly inflated. That's where you messed up. And it's one of many things and reasons why you made it unappealing for people to want families now. Now they don't even desire them. And it's not, in my opinion, a generational thing. It's an economic thing. Economically, it is just, see, things did not cost the same as it did when I was coming up. Things were still affordable for people. Even by the time I became in my early adult, things were still pretty much affordable. You could find decent housing, and it did not cost a lot of money. But now, even around me, when I look around me, a lot of these houses are very expensive. And most of these millennials, they're thinking, I don't want to pour all my income into all of these things. I want to be able to enjoy my life. I want to just stay in my condo or apartment and have enough money to enjoy life. Why should I go out here and spend it on all these expensive things? And at the end of the day, I can't afford it. So I blame America for that. And I blame America's greed and your unfriendly family policies at work. You've created this environment, and now you're asking why people aren't having children in it. This is the system you created. See, it looks good to you, but it doesn't look good to the youth. And that's what you really need to be concerned about. It don't look good to them. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is an article written about East Village, New York. A lot of um, white people also lived in those locations. Remember, they weren't all in the suburbs. Many of these folks also lived in the city, and quite a few of them grew up in the city. Like I said, we when I was growing up in the hood, we lived right down the road from the white neighborhood. In fact, you went down a few lights and you were in the white neighborhood. You came back, you were back in the black neighborhood, in the area where the black people were. So those areas were booming back in the 70s, back in the 80s and the 90s, even 2000, early 2000. Those areas were booming. It was a lot of housing and wealth. The prices were not outrageous like they are. You know, families had a lot of school age children that they were raising. But since 2011, the number of babies born in New York has declined 9%. And it's been just in free fall from that point on. And these are 5 boroughs in New York. It's dropped 9%. And 15% in Manhattan. I have family in New York. And I remember back in the day, they used to boast about New York and, oh, you should come. And one of my relatives wanted me to come and live in New York. She was like, you can come live in New York and you'll be around the family. And New York was just never one of those places I wanted to live. But I used to like visiting the city. I would visit them and we would go into the city to different restaurants and shopping and everything. And that actually was fun. It was fun. And wow, I mean, everything has inflated to the point a lot of people are now leaving New York. They're actually having a hard time keeping people there. It wasn't like that years ago. A lot of people like being and living in New York. Now they're having um, a terrible time with the residents leaving New York, and the residents are leaving at a time where it's doubled now than any other time. And they said the infant population has been cut in half in the past 30 years. So, less babies being born in the city. There are many reasons New York might be shrinking, but most of them come down to an unavoidable fact. Raising a family in the city is just too hard. They're right. Go look at the housing and even having an apartment in New York. It is outrageous. It's outrageous. And again, I blame the people running this society for that. I blame them for this. You're pricing people out of the cities. And at the end of the day, your act of doing that, those cities are going to eventually start becoming more empty. And that's what's happening in New York. They said they're not even going to try to raise a family there because it's too difficult. And the same could be said of pretty much every other dense and expensive urban area in the country. High density cities like San Francisco, Seattle, and Washington, D.C., no group is growing faster than rich college educated whites without children. Do you hear that? The only group that is thriving in these high dense areas are rich, college educated whites without children. Right now, they are the only ones thriving in the city. That's why they're able to gentrify cities and neighborhoods. They're the only ones thriving. Okay, by contrast, families with children older than six are in outright decline in places. So these places, these big cities are no longer appealing to the average citizen. It's just too expensive. The biggest picture, it turned out that America's urban rebirth is missing a key element: births. So if you look at this chart, this is from 2000 to 2017. People with no college, look how they're doing. They're in the negative. Eldest child of six in the negative. Eldest child under six, they're barely making it. No children. Look at what happens when there are no children. The people economically are thriving. White college grad, no school age kid. Look at how much wealth they have when there's no children. This is why they're not going to have families anymore. You understand that? That's equivalent to these men trying to get a control over their women and say you need to have babies and we're going to come up with these abortion laws. Well, you let your women come out and gain wealth and have all kinds of stocks and perks through employment. You can't stuff them back in the house now and say you better start having babies and stop running around having them abortions. They're not going to listen to you now. You let them have prosperity out here. You can't take it away now. They're not going to lay down and have children. Just understand that. It's not going to happen. See, now these kids are getting a dose of what life is like without kids. They don't want to give it up. They would rather choose wealth over struggling to have a family, a home, and the dog and the picket fence. They don't want to struggle through that anymore. They want most of their wealth to go to themselves. That's the kind of generation that's here now. Yeah, see, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is not, in my opinion, it's an economic thing. And this economic thing that has happened is the fault of the people that's running the country. I'm still going to point my finger there. Powers that be, or whatever you call them, it's their fault. This is the environment they created. The counties that make up Los Angeles, Chicago, New York City, and Philadelphia shed a combination of 2 million domestic residents from 2010 to 2018. For many years, these cities' main source of population growth hasn't been babies or even college graduates, it's been immigrants. But, you know, now, sorry about the interruption, y'all, but you know what? they're right about the immigrants. One thing about the immigrants, they have a setup in those cities. They already have relatives. Usually when they come over here, they live with relatives or someone they know, and they stay until they can save up enough cash to either start their own businesses or go off and live on their own. And the city has always been, especially Manhattan. That's why when you go, every single cab driver is a foreigner. You never run into any that were born in America because they have taken over those jobs to help gain a financial foothold in this country when they first get here. So many of these foreigners, and I knew a few of them, will come and live with a cousin or an uncle or somebody that's already here. So they got it set up where they can kind of lean on each other when they come. The woman from Slovakia comes to Queens, live in her second cousin's basement, gets her feet on the ground, and gets a better apartment in West Orange, New Jersey. This is usually how they do it. And or 20 something from North Dakota moves to Chicago after school. Okay, so works at a consultancy for a few years, finds a partner, moves to Missoula. So they pretty much lean on each other, where we don't have that. And many of these young Americans, when they relocate, a lot of times they're relocating because they know people already in the area. They're not necessarily relocating alone. So they have a network that they can lean on, where we never really developed that like we should have. But we have everything working against us in this society. So now the richest metro areas in the U.S. also have a bunch of young college graduates that are childless or no school-age children. And they're not really working towards having a family at all. Those are the kind of people you have in metro areas now. That's it. So things are different. The attitudes are different. And so now cities have effectively traded away their children, swapping capital for kids. And that's exactly right. This, ladies and gentlemen, I know some of you are saying, well, it's generational. You didn't prepare us. No, this is economics. This is all about economics. Economically, things were very different from the other generations. But by the time this country kept inflating everything, and see, your politicians are the ones that have done this all through the years and allowing all of these inflations go on to the point where they never put any kind of measures in place so that things would not be unaffordable for the public. They didn't care. They kept raising property taxes. They kept raising prices on products in stores. And everybody was fine with that. Now it's hitting a ceiling, and these folks are saying, no, I'm not spending my money on all that stuff. I want money for myself. I want to enjoy my wealth. I'm not spreading around and spending it on all these other things. Now you got a generation and they don't know what to do now. But again, I blame the people that run America, the ones that are in power. You should have seen this coming, and you did not. You let everything spiral financially out of control in the country. Now you're in so much debt, it's very difficult for you to lower prices. And they don't lower prices, ladies and gentlemen. They inflate prices. They inflate prices everywhere. So it's a coast to coast trend. In Washington, D.C., the overall population has grown more than 20% this century, but the number of children under the age of 18 has declined. Meanwhile, San Francisco has the lowest share of children of any of the largest 100 cities in the U.S. The modern American city is not a microcosm of life, but a micro slice of it. It's becoming the Epcot uh, theme park for childless affluent, where the rich can act like kids without having any actually for you to see. And that is the truth, y'all. So a lot of these people that are coming to gentrify the hood, they come as single without children, and that's what really the majority of them are. But please tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. This is America. This is what America has created. And they should not be shocked if their groups are not thriving with children. You created this environment. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.